Welcome to Real Estate Weekly, a 30-minute program that provides you information on the real estate market today. Featuring Brian Stuckey, Dan Lawson, and Greg Flowers. And now, Brian Stuckey.
Good evening. Welcome to Real Estate Weekly. I'm Brian Stuckey along with Dan Lawson. We'd like to welcome you to our program. We'd also like to take the time to thank Judy Hamilton for being a long-time part of our program. She's no longer with our company. We want to wish her the best. She sure added to our program just with her knowledge and the fact that she was a little bit better looking than us, Dan. I think that didn't hurt.
That always helped a little bit.
It always helped a lot. But so anyway, thank you very much, Judy Hamilton. We wish you the best. For our climate segment, we got Morgan McGuire was on last week. He's with Century 21 Fine Homes and Estates, and he'll be talking about pretty much the San Jose area, Santa Teresa area, why that's a good place to buy, why there's some good bargains out there, and what makes it such a nice community to buy in. Dan?
On our weekly spotlight segment, I'm going to be talking to Rusty Carker from Property Inspection Service, and we'll be discussing the benefits of doing a home inspection and why you should actually do one when you're thinking of purchasing a home. On our economic segment, we're lucky enough to have Steve Everett join us, and we'll be talking about Nevada corporations and asset protection. Brian, what do you have for viewer mail? Well,
we'll find out. We're going to have viewer mail. We'll be asking, we'll be answering some of the questions that you've posed on our website. And let's be frank, some people just call us up and ask questions. That's fine too. And we go ahead and write those down and we answer them here on the program. But first, before we go on anywhere else, we're going to do our real estate climate. Morgan McGuire is our guest. He's with Century 21 Fine Homes and Estates in San Jose. And Morgan, thanks for coming back with us again.
Thank you.
Morgan, we want to talk specifically about some areas of San Jose that are pockets, maybe some good bargains or whatever. Mm-hmm. What about Santa Teresa area? What do you think about that area?
Generally, if you're looking to get the most house for your dollar, I would tend to put clients in the Santa Teresa, Blossom Valley area.
Okay.
This has held up well with value, but it's also less expensive. It's a good area to be in because you're close to major highways such as 85 and 101.
Okay. Does it have a sense of community out there? I think that sometimes people, you've got 85 going out there and 101, mm-hmm. So sometimes it feels a little disjointed. Am I incorrect on that, or is it, there are some nice communities around there?
There are some nice communities. It depends on where you're looking. What they have done is there's a lot of townhomes, and those townhomes are called McEwens.
Okay. And
those are one of the last affordable areas of housing in the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. So those are congregated in certain areas throughout the valley in Santa Teresa, and what you have is you don't have a large mixture of townhomes and single families, so that tends to bring the neighborhoods of Class 1, which is single family homes, mm-hmm. in tighter. And what I've seen is a lot of people moving up, as we discussed last week on the program, and they're going from smaller homes, and I just moved a client 4 blocks away.
Okay. So
that tells you that it's a good community and they like to live there.
Sure. I actually like that area myself, and I lived in a McEwen home,
right.
And it's a great way to start out in homeowning, is it not?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good way to get into it. You can get into it relatively cheaply and build your equity and move on from there. Use it as a stepping stone.
Okay, great. That's great advice. Now let's talk a little bit about the market itself. Mm-hmm. And now you're talking about there's some great bargains out in that area, mm-hmm. And right now it's kind of a buyer's market going on a little bit. There's not the multiple offers that you would see in a seller's market.
Right.
What would you recommend to a seller in a market quite like this to try to get the most out of their dollar?
I would definitely say showing their home as best as possible. And in doing this, what you need to realize is there are many homes for sale right now, and you need to make your home stand out. So first impressions are lasting. So when you have somebody come into the home, what you want to do is make sure you put away all the clutter that you can. You want to keep windows open, have a lot of light coming in. If you've got some dark flooring, maybe spend $1,000, $2,000 to replace certain areas, and touch-up paint.
Okay. Touch-up paint, what are usually the paints that usually work as far as, what kind of touch-up would you want? Mm-hmm. What kind of paint would you recommend?
Well, what you'd want to do is keep it very neutral. So you want whites or creams. Neutrality is key because if the house is highly specified to someone's liking, it's going to take longer to find someone to put them in that house because we want to put people in the house that they really love. And What happens is if you have a highly specialized home and you haven't done these touch-up paints, you haven't painted the walls or frames or what have you, then those people are going to come through in the first 2 weeks that the home's on the market. And if you lose those people in the first 2 weeks, you're going to have to drop your price.
Okay. One other thing, too, with inspections, typically in a buyer's market, buyers can start asking for some of the Section 1 work to be done.
Sure.
What are you recommending the sellers, to get it done, or?
Yes. Yes, I always recommend that we get pest control before we put the property on the market. So if we know there are any major things that need to be fixed, we can have those fixed before we have an offer come in to avoid any details that may hang up the deal.
Yeah, certainly that you don't want any hang-up. In a situation like this, you don't want people to walk away. You want them to feel like they can, you give them the keys, they can walk in, it's ready to go. Is that
exactly? Correct? And if I were coming in to look at a property, I would like to know exactly what's going on with it. So therefore, we do that for our clients.
Very good. Thanks, Morgan.
Thank you.
Morgan McGuire with Century 21 Fine Homes and Estates. Thanks for being our guest, Morgan.
Thank you very much.
And right now we have your spotlight.
Hello, welcome to our weekly Spotlight segment. My name is Dan Lawson. I'm here with Rusty Carricker, and he's from the Property Home Inspection Service, and we're very happy to have you here, Rusty.
Thank you very much.
In my opinion, this is one of the premier keys of buying a house. I know finding the home is the toughest thing.
Right.
The next toughest probably is finding a mortgage that really suits your economic position, and then lastly, making sure that the house doesn't have any surprises in it.
That's right, and that's our job. Right,
exactly.
Our job is to basically eliminate any post-sale headaches that might come up after you've closed the escrow. For most of us here in the Silicon Valley, buying a home is our most significant investment that we'll ever make. And so obviously you want to have a home inspection performed to make sure that there are no surprises and you actually know what you're buying.
When you say a surprise, really clarify what a surprise is. A surprise is that, you know, maybe you've got more damage or you got water damage you didn't realize you had, and it cost you $10,000 to change your pipes.
Exactly, or a surprise could be that the guy before you decided to do some of his own electrical work and he wired 2 wires into one circuit, and all of a sudden you try to turn something on and the house blows up and now you got a problem.
Oh, we'll get to the weekend wire.
Yeah, right.
Let's touch on that afterward. But so would that be your assessment of what a home inspection is?
Yeah, the home inspection is essentially a non-invasive physical inspection of the structural, mechanical, plumbing, and electrical systems of the home. So it takes into account virtually every component of the home. We don't do termites, and I know you wanted to ask me what the difference between a termite inspection and a property inspection is. Termite inspections, they're going in to look for pests and dry rot and that kind of thing, but ours is more structural, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing related.
You know, a recent home my wife and I purchased, we had a home inspection because I believe in them. Because if you don't do it, the person who buys your house probably will, and he's going to discover the problems that you inherited from your seller, and you're going to be left having to pay for them.
That's exactly right.
That's potentially a rough bill to pay. But what I found so interesting is, I mean, I watched the guy. He turned the faucets on. He checked to see if the trap was leaking. I mean, maybe go into some detail about. I mean, you kind of gave it an overview, but clarify how detailed your inspection is.
Well, essentially, we're trying to give you a full overview of all of the components in the home. I think where people get confused, there's no way to do a full electrical analysis in the time that it takes us to do a home inspection. And so I think oftentimes people expect, oh, gee, can you tell me exactly the full analysis of the plumbing system or the full analysis of the electrical? That doesn't happen with a home inspection, but we give you an overview for any potential red flags that may exist, and say, you know what, you need to call an electrician out here to give you some further recommendations for any potential corrective work that may be there.
Exactly. So you're really kind of a home counselor.
Exactly.
All right. All right. So in that case, then, you wouldn't really need to be licensed. You're not a licensed contractor. You wouldn't need to be, would you?
Well, actually, all of the guys that work for our company are licensed general contractors, but that's our own requirement. The state...
Well, that's safe. That's a nice requirement.
Currently, the state does not regulate the home inspection industry. And so we're self-regulated. Our inspections are done according to ASHI standards. ASHI is ASHI for American Society of Home Inspectors. And in the Business and Professions Codes of California, Section 7195, it actually talks about if you're going to call yourself a home inspector, you have to do your inspections that meet or exceed ASHI standards. And so all of our inspections do that.
Well, it's nice that they have a regulatory body that's at least trying to set a bar
that
everybody has to write to or rise to.
Yeah.
So that's a nice thing.
Right.
Is that just a California thing, or is it across the nation?
Actually, there are some states that are licensed and others that are not. And so we're headed toward licensing, which I think is great because it'll weed out a lot of these guys that are, when they get slow with their contracting business, they say, I think today I'll be a home inspector. Right. And they don't really have any guidelines to work from that protect the consumer, and that's why this bill was written.
And it's probably part of the reason you have the relationship you have with the realtors that you work with, because of that association. They want to make sure that the client they represent is handled and dealt with in an appropriate way.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, wonderful. Well, Rusty, stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break. We're going to come back and talk about some of the common things that arise in a home, and he's going to indicate some of the things. We have a little graphic for you, too, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
The remarkable thing about planning your financial future is, the sooner you start, the easier it is to meet your goals. Watch the mail for your Social Security statement. Use it to plan your financial future. The future is in your hands.
Welcome back to our weekly Spotlight segment. My name is Dan Lawson. I'm here with Rusty Carricker from Property Inspection Service. I did pronounce your name correct. That
yeah, that's right. And you actually got the company right too.
Did I? All right, good. Property Inspection Service. All right. See, I'm getting better. Anyway, what I'd like to talk about now is some of the things that are most commonly found in a home. And you brought in this little graph for me to hold up. So what are some of those things that are most commonly found, Rusty?
Well, as we look at the graph, you can see that this is with relation to California homes. I think one of the things that in this area that we worry about is the water heater strapped accordingly. And most of the time people just nail them in there. They don't use the proper lag bolts to strap the water heater in. But several years ago we had a 16-unit apartment complex actually go up in flames as a result of a very small earthquake that knocked the water heater off of its platform, and it started a fire. And so these things are done to protect the consumer. And I'd say one of the biggest issues that we have is site drainage. And it's such an easy thing to take care of if you just make sure that the landscaping around the house falls away from the house about a ½ inch per foot for 5 feet away from the house.
You're talking about from the foundation, where the wall comes into the ground.
Because concrete is not waterproof. And if you dump 500 gallons of water down at the base of the house, you want to see which way is that water going. Is it going into and under the house, which is causing all these problems with mold that the attorneys are running wild with these days. It can wreak havoc on the foundation in terms of the structural integrity of the house.
Sure.
And so site drainage is a huge issue because of the long-term effects that it can have.
Well, let's touch on this mold issue then. So if someone isn't sure, they could just go down to Home Depot, get one of those big black pipes and shove it under the thing and just carry it out 4 or 5 feet into their lawn and let it go.
Sure, we love the guys that go down to Home Depot, Orchard Supply. That's why we're in business, because guys are going out on the weekend, they're doing their own work, and they are well-intended. 90% of the problems that we find are done by the work of a creative homeowner, if you will.
Right, okay.
And it's all well-intended. Most of the guys don't realize, but they're buying products that are not a code type of material, and ultimately the consumer's at risk, and that's why we have the codes in place.
Well, you know, even if they purchase products, I mean, how could a brick be out of code, or how could something be out of code, or a door or something? I mean, there are certain issues that can be, but even if they buy something that is to code, then it gets to the quality of the installation, and if it's not your trade, you might save 20%, even 50%. But if it doesn't create the impact when you're ready to sell the house, you could stand back and go, yeah, I put that door in.
Right.
But you don't want someone to walk in and say, you put that door in, didn't you?
Right. Well, and oftentimes with a house, what we like to tell our clients is, when you go into a house that's built in 1954 and there's a paddle fan and a Gen Air oven, you got to ask yourself the question, was this born with the house? And it probably wasn't.
That's right.
And so now the next question is, if it wasn't born with the house, who put it in? What was the pedigree of the work of that person that did it? And then
was the electrical upgraded appropriately to the...
all those things.
Right.
And that's our job, is to go out there and help you identify those things before you close the escrow, so you don't have any post-sale headaches.
Yeah, and of course, if you are a weekend warrior, as a phrase is commonly said, and we see so many programs about do it yourself, it's not that hard.
Right.
I based on what I'm hearing you say, really be selective with what you decide to do and what you decide not to do, because it could cost you thousands of dollars to repair later.
That's right, and there's plenty of projects out there that you can do on your own that don't have any effect on the overall threat to health or safety to your house and to your family.
Exactly.
And I've always said that it's getting a competent resource is much more important and saves you dollars in the long run.
Sure.
So.
Well, you know, let's touch a bit on some of the other things. We hopped onto that Weekend Warrior thing, and you know, you were talking about gutters. That's something that I think people should do. How often?
Oh, once a year they should go through and clean out the gutters and make sure.
So if they haven't yet, they should, because
the rain is coming. It doesn't feel like it, but the rain is definitely coming. And you know, I think just to touch on what people do, a lot of times they do the work themselves. They don't want to get a contractor because they don't like dealing with the government, trying to get an appointment with the city to get a permit, increase tax costs. But the bottom line is all those things create value for your house, and it's better to have a professional do the work.
Well said. Well said. Well, Rusty, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule today.
Thanks, Dan. My pleasure.
We'd love to have you on again. We'll get you back on very soon.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this segment. And if you'd like to have Rusty forward some information, maybe this chart that I held up and some other information he has, go to our website, email me, and I'll be happy to put you in contact with Rusty so he can forward that information to you. It's now time for our economic update. Hello and welcome to our economic update. My name still is Dan Lawson. We're glad you're still with us. I'm now joined by Steve Everett from Financial Services, and very happy to have him come on. He's a regular on our program, and he always gives us a wealth of information. Steve, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Well, you know, I promoted the program earlier to say that we're going to be talking about Nevada corporations. Well, why would someone be interested in doing a Nevada corporation?
Well, there's three main reasons. One would be asset protection, another would be privacy, and also tax reduction.
Well, so let's break down each one. How is a Nevada corporation a way to protect your assets? And are you talking about your business or personal assets? What kind of assets?
Both assets. We live in a society that everybody likes to sue one another.
Sure.
They're trying to take your hard-earned assets away from you, especially if you own a business. So a way of doing that is moving your assets into a Nevada corporation. Because in Nevada, it's the only state in the union that allows what's called bearer stock, which means the stock in your company, I hand it to you, I no longer own the corporation. So it's very difficult to be sued for those assets. So when an attorney looks at your sheet of paper and how much assets you have, on paper you're a pauper. And so the contingency type fee where there's no risk of someone suing you is eliminated because they can't collect any money, and the attorney wants a $12,000 retainer fee. That drops a lawsuit.
And he looks onto the assets of the person that would be the defendant and say, well, we can just, you know, we can put it on consignment. If we win, he has to pay and do all that kind of thing. If you don't have any money, the attorney doesn't think it's a worthwhile suit.
Correct.
I see. Okay. Well, what about the tax aspect? I mean, if we're operating a business in California and have a Nevada corporation, aren't we still liable for California tax?
Absolutely, but there's ways where you can alleviate and greatly reduce your taxes, and that is, let's say you have a bunch of trucks in your business, or maybe you have a vending machine business. You put all those into the Nevada corporation for asset protection, but you can lease back those, and you're going to be paying a monthly amount of money to that Nevada corporation. Well, in Nevada, the first $50,000 that that corporation earns is only taxed at a federal rate of 15%. There's no state
rate? Yeah, okay.
There's no state tax. There won't be any self-employment tax, and there's no corporation tax or inventory tax. So it can greatly minimize your taxes.
So it's 50% of 50,000 tax on 50,000 of profit, not of gross revenue. So you've got expenses and so on that's going to offset a great deal of that.
Absolutely.
And you can depreciate the machinery because you're leasing it back. So there are a lot of advantages tax-wise.
You can teach this.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I've been around a few barbecues. Anyway, well, how does a person, let me see, you've got a number of questions here and I want to make sure we cover them. Well, let's talk about taking advantage of some of the protection that the Nevada Corporation offers. You know, you talked about asset protection, privacy, and so on. Let's touch on a number of those.
Okay, like Silicon Valley, we have a lot of homeowners that have a great deal of equity in their properties. Well, because of that equity, it makes them a target for lawsuits. And so by shielding those where someone can't go after them, therefore you're protected. And a good question would be is, well, do you put your personal residence into the Nevada Corporation? You don't want to put your personal residence in there. Reason being is you get certain interest write-offs and property tax, so you want to not do that. What you do instead is you do what O.J. Simpson did, and he puts what's called friendly liens on the property. That way you're protected and you don't have to kill anybody.
Oh gosh. Oh my, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, that poor OJ guy, I should say poor, that OJ guy, he's really everybody's taking shots at that guy.
Oh, he lost.
Deservedly so, too, I think.
He lost a $32 million suit, and yet the only thing they were able to collect was the Heisman Trophy. That was it.
Amazing, amazing. Well, with regard to a person's resident, would you then recommend that they protect it with a trust?
A trust will not protect their property whatsoever.
Oh, that's just that's a death or demise issue, so
Right,
it just
that's a
passes
probate
and transfers.
issue,
Okay,
right.
probate. I got it. Well, what about offshore issues and so on? Why don't we touch base on some of the offshore trusts and some of the things that you know about that?
Okay, the problem with offshore trust is they're very expensive. They cost about $30,000 to set up, and then trying to get rid of your trustee because he's not doing what you want him to do is almost impossible to do, and so it's a very difficult thing to work with. Whereas an offshore corporation, it's very simple. It only costs $5,000 rather than $30,000, and the cost of maintaining it is very low.
Okay. Well, on a corporation, what is the cost to set this up and to have it renew each year?
With a Nevada corporation, our cost is $3,000 for the first year, and then every year to renew it, you have state licensing and so forth, and that costs $495. Plus, they can call the attorney Monday through Friday, ask them any question they want, never be charged for the phone call or a consultation fee.
So the attorney is someone on staff at your firm?
That is correct.
Wonderful. Well, Steve, thanks very much. Again, a wealth of information. I want to thank you for being with us today, and we'll love to have you back on very soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, stay tuned now. It's time for the Viewer Mail segment with Brian Stuckey.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Real Estate Weekly. I'm Brian Stuckey. We have your viewer mail. And Dan, I got to tell you just off the top, I didn't think our show would ever have O.J. Simpson or references to it.
Well, you know, it's always a first for something,
There
right?
is always a first. But let's get right into it. We want to first of all thank you for sending in your viewer mail questions. You can either just write us, you know, a letter. Typically, we never see that happen, but you can go to our website, reweeklytv.com, and go in there and ask us a question. We'll be glad to answer it on the program, or just give us a call, and maybe we'll do it that way as well. But Dan, right off the bat, John from San Jose is asking about, he just signed loan papers and everything else, and he knows that the property, he was charged for property taxes, but since then he's required to pay some more. I think it's probably because he got the
well, yes, property taxes are due December 1st, or actually they're due. I think it was the escrow. He had a problem.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So he's wondering why is he, if they're not due December 10th, why is he having to come up with them now?
Well, in a refinance, whether he wants to have impounds or not, or if a person wants to have impounds or not, anytime your loan papers, for anybody refinancing now, if they have a December 1st or later monthly payment that's due, their first payment due, the county, Santa Clara County or whatever county they live in, is requiring that escrow collect for their property taxes, because they're actually due November 1st.
Sure.
They're delinquent December 10th, but most people post date and drop in the mailbox at December 10th.
First part of December, sure.
Right, exactly, and then everything's fine for them, and they don't really realize that it really is due on the 1st.
Now, the one thing I want to mention to you is that there's a chart that we get, and they tell you, I'm thinking impound accounts right now, but
Sure.
whenever we are approaching
And it didn't
that
sound
date,
like he had impounds. He didn't have impounds, I don't think.
yeah, I'm going to discuss the impounds in a moment here, but the thing is that like you said, the lenders are thinking they're due November 1st, and that's when they want. So if we're approaching that date, then they're going to want to make sure that those are paid. That's as simple as that, because
That's exactly right.
they don't want the tax lien hanging out on
But
them.
we're all conditioned to think, well, it's not due. We think it's due December 10th, so maybe we'll send it off the 1st of December or whenever. And most people wait. But if you do have impounds, anybody that has impounds, their lender is handling the distribution of property taxes.
Sure.
And what they'll do then is the lenders send that check off on the 1st of November.
And I want to step back. I want to talk about impounds, because ultimately when people buy a property, or even if they go through a refinance,
Sure.
they still have an option that you can pay every 6 months. And it's actually not exactly 6 months, by the way, but you can pay 2 installments throughout the year, and those are 2 larger installments. Or you have an option, Dan, and you know this, but you can have an impound account, and that's it. With each month, that 1/12 of what you pay during the course of the year, you'll pay along with your principal interest You'll pay also taxes, insurance with that payment too, and you won't have to pay 2 installments during the course of the year. What's your feeling on that?
Well, for people that maybe are they have a tight budget, it's a wonderful thing for them to just pay the lender, have the lender handle it, because it's very convenient. As we mentioned, the payment is due on November 1st, delinquent on December 10th. If most people wait till the middle of December to make the payment, it might make for a bad Christmas for the family. So if you don't have to worry about budgeting for it, some people prefer it, some people do not. I find most of my clients, because of the size of property taxes being $500 to maybe $800 a month, they would rather have the money taken out of their own check, deposit in a credit union or something like that, and then they reward themselves with the interest over the year, and they go and treat themselves to dinner.
Correct. I've recommended to clients, open up your own separate account.
Right.
And just separate from what your normal checking account is or savings account, and just have that one just for taxes, especially, Dan, like you just mentioned. If they've got a tax bill that works out to like $500 to $800 a month, that's money that they're sending over if they have an impound account that's sitting there with the lender, and they're not sending off that each month to, you know,
no, the lender's not going to pay them interest, nor can the lender collect interest on it. The money's just sitting there waiting to be distributed.
And they're just going, I love all the bankers are going, I love these.
Yeah, I mean, it's
accounts.
convenient, but
Sure.
it's convenient for the consumer, but not always the most prudent investment. One other thing that is nice about having the control over paying, do I have enough time to go into
We
this?
just have about 1 minute left.
Okay, I'll be quick.
Okay.
The nice thing about having control over when you pay your property taxes is that, you know, a few years ago people were getting stock options and all these additional benefits to salary. So if you get a distribution, or if you're in sales and you have an extra special year, you can pay the installment that's due next April. You can pay it before the 31st of December and write it off in this tax year. So if you have fluctuating income, it might be a tool for you that you wouldn't be able to do if you had impounds.
Okay. Good point, Dan. Thanks for your viewer mail. Once again, we want to encourage you to go to our website, www.reweeklytv.com. For Dan Lawson, Brian Stuckey, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Real Estate Weekly.